Hey, buddy, I am so glad that we are back in school. Today is January the 5th. It is Tuesday, and we are actually going to start a new book today in Wit and Wisdom. We're going to do the book. It's also about John Henry, but it's a different book about John Henry. This one is written by Julius Lester. Okay, so we're going to read this book today about John Henry. So you need to make sure that you have your knowledge and response journal ready to go. We're going to be on page 88 today. Go ahead and write the title of the book today and the date and the book and then the notice and the wonder so that you can be ready for when we get started. So go ahead and pause the video and then just push play when you're ready to go on. Okay, so I am super glad that everybody's back. I hope you all had a great winter break. I hope you enjoyed the snow that we had and had some good time with your family and got lots of rest and hopefully got all your work caught up because you only have today and tomorrow to finish it. It has to be done by Wednesday morning. Okay, so anything that you don't have done, make sure you check your Google Classroom, make sure all of your work is completed, make sure it's actually done before you turn it in, please. Okay, all right, so we're going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get started with our video.
Welcome back, amazing thinkers. I'm Sue Sabella, your Great Minds teacher. Let's see what we need for today. Today, you'll need your journal and a pencil. So please pause here to gather what you need and just hit play when you're ready to continue. Today, we'll begin an exploration of another version of John Henry's legend. This one is written by Julius Lester, and the illustrations are by Jerry Pinkney. Let's coral read this question together. What do I notice and wonder about this text? Pause here to set up a notice and wonder question chart in your journal. Just hit play when you're ready to continue. Since you're so observant, you probably noticed the question words in the corner. Those are there to remind you to use the question words at the beginning of your wonder questions. And remember, challenge yourself. See how many why and how questions you can generate or create. I'm going to read the text all the way through, so it'll be up to you to pause and to jot either something you're noticing or a wonder question that you have. We're also going to pause after each of the 5 big events in this book. And we're going to take a big stretch to remind us that this is a big event in the story. Remember, just hit the pause button to jot down what you notice and your wonder questions. Start here on the cover. Pause to notice and wonder on the cover, and then just hit play when you're ready to continue.
Okay, so I want to make sure that everyone understands what Isabella just said, okay? She is going to read the book all the way through. You're going to take breaks to pause after the end of each big event, and then you are responsible for pausing the video and writing down your notices and your wonders on your own, okay? I am not going to be stopping throughout the video to say, write down your notices and wonders. You need to do that part on your own this time, okay? And it's a big book. There's lots of things in it. You should have at least 2 notices and 2 wonders, at least, okay? All right, so remember, you're going to be listening. You are in control of this. You can pause whenever you need to write something down.
You have probably never heard of John Henry, or maybe you heard about him but don't know the ins and outs of his comings and goings. Well, that's why I'm going to tell you about him. When John Henry was born, birds came from everywhere to see him. The bears and the panthers and the moose and deer and rabbits and squirrels, and even a unicorn came out of the woods to see him. And instead of the sun tending to its business and going to bed, it was peeping out from behind the moon's skirts, trying to get a glimpse of the new baby. Before long, the mama and papa come out on the porch to show off their brand new baby. The birds oohed and the animals awed at how handsome the baby was. Somewhere in the middle of one of the oohs, or maybe it was on the backside of one of the ahs, that baby jumped out of its mama's arms and started growing. He grew and he grew and he grew. He grew until his head and shoulders busted through the roof, which was over the porch. John Henry thought that was the funniest thing in the world. He laughed so loud the sun got scared. It scurried from behind the moon's skirts and went to bed, which is where it should have been all the while. John Henry was born, and that is a big event. Pause here to take a big stretch. Just hit play when you're ready to continue. The next morning, John Henry was up at sunrise. The sun wasn't. He was tired and had decided to sleep in. John Henry wasn't going to have none of that. He hollered up into the sky, "Get up from there! I got things to do, and I need light to do 'em by." The sun yawned, washed its face, flossed and brushed its teeth, and hurried up over the horizon. That day, John Henry helped his papa rebuild the porch he had busted through, added a wing onto the house with an indoor swimming pool and one of them jacuzzis, and after lunch, he chopped down an acre of trees and split them into fireplace logs, and still had time for a nap before supper. That is a big event. Take a big stretch to signal this big event. And also, don't forget to jot down what you're noticing and what your wonder questions are. And then just hit play to continue. The next day, John Henry went to town. He met up with the meanest man in the state, Ferret-Faced Freddy, sitting on his big white horse. You know what he was doing? He was thinking of mean things to do. Ferret-Faced Freddy was so mean, he cried if he had a nice thought. John Henry said, "Freddy, I'll make you a bet. Let's have a race. You on your horse, me on my legs. If you or your horse win, you can work me as hard as you want for a whole year. If I win, you have to be nice for a year." Ferret-Faced Freddy laughed an evil laugh. "Ha ha ha! It's a deal, John Henry." His voice sounded like bat wings on tombstones. Wow, there is so much to notice and wonder. Don't forget to pause as much as you need to. The next morning, folks lined up all along the way the race would go. John Henry was ready. Ferret-Faced Freddy and his horse were ready. Bang! The race was on. My great-granddaddy's brothers, cousins, sister-in-laws, uncles, aunt was there that morning. She said everybody saw Ferret-Faced Freddy ride by on his big white horse, and they were sure enough moving. Didn't nobody see John Henry? That's because he was so fast. The wind was out of breath trying to keep up with him. When Ferret-Faced Freddy crossed the finish line, John Henry was already on the other side, sitting in a rocking chair and drinking a soda mom. After that, Ferret-Faced Freddy was so nice, everybody called him Frederick the Friendly. That was a big event. Show me with your arms how big it was. Don't forget to use your stretch time to also do some jotting of what you're noticing and also your wonder questions. Just hit play when you're ready to continue. John Henry decided it was time for him to go on down the big road. He went home and told his mama and daddy goodbye. His daddy said, "You gotta have something to make your way in the world with, son. These belong to your granddaddy." And he gave him two 20-pound sledgehammers with 4-foot handles made of whalebone. A day or so later, John Henry saw a crew building a road. At least that's what they were doing until they came on a boulder right smack dab where the road was supposed to go. This was no ordinary boulder. It was as hard as anger and so big around it took half a week for a tall man to walk from one side to the other. John Henry offered to lend them a hand. "That's all right. We'll put some dynamite to it." John Henry smiled to himself. "Whatever you say." The road crew planted dynamite all around the rock and set it off. Kerboom! Blamity, blamity, boom, boom, bang, boom, bang. That dynamite made so much racket, the Almighty looked over the parapets of heaven and hollered, "It's getting too noisy down there." The dynamite kicked up so much dirt and dust, it got dark. The moon thought night had caught her napping, and she hurried out so fast she almost bumped into the sun, who was still climbing the steep hill toward noontime. When all the commotion from the dynamite was over, the road crew was amazed. The boulder was still there. In fact, the dynamite hadn't knocked even a chip off it. The crew didn't know what to do. Then they heard a rumbling noise. They looked around. It was John Henry laughing. He said, "If you gentlemen will give me a little room, I got some work to do." "Don't see how you can do what dynamite couldn't," said the boss of the crew. John Henry chuckled. "Just watch me." He swung one of his hammers round and round his head. It made such a wind that leaves blew off the trees and birds fell out of the sky. Ring! The hammer hit the boulder. That boulder shivered like you do on a cold winter morning when it looks like the school bus is never going to come. Ring! The boulder shivered like the morning when freedom came to the slaves. John Henry picked up his other hammer. He swung one hammer in a circle over his head. As soon as it hit the rock, ring! The hammer in his left hand started to make a circle, and ring! Soon the ring of one hammer followed the ring of the other one so closely it sounded like they were falling at the same time. Ring, 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 ring. Chips and dust were flying from the boulder so fast that John Henry vanished from sight, but you could still hear his hammers ring, ring. The air seemed to be dancing to the rhythm of his hammers. The boss of the road crew looked up. His mouth dropped open. He pointed into the sky. There, in the air above the boulder, was a rainbow. John Henry was swinging the hammer so fast, he was making a rainbow around his shoulders. It was shining and shimmering in the dust and grit like hope that never dies. John Henry started singing. I got a rainbow ring, ring, tied round my shoulder, ring, ring. It ain't gonna rain, no, it ain't gonna rain, ring, ring. John Henry sang and he hammered, and the air danced, and the rainbow shimmered, and the earth shook and rolled from the blows of the hammer. Finally, it was quiet. Slowly, the dust cleared. Folks could not believe their eyes. The boulder was gone. In its place was the prettiest and straightest road they had ever seen. Not only had John Henry pulverized the boulder into pebbles, he had finished building the road. In the distance where the new road connected to the main one, the road crew saw John Henry waving goodbye, a hammer on each shoulder, the rainbow draped around him like love. That was the big event. Don't forget to stretch, and also be sure to jot down what you're noticing and also all those questions that you have. Just hit play when you're ready to continue. John Henry went on his way. He had heard that any man good with a hammer could find work building the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad through West Virginia. That was where he had been going when he stopped to build the road. The next day, John Henry arrived at the railroad. However, work had stopped. The railroad tracks had to go through a mountain, and such a mountain. Next to it, even John Henry felt small. But a worker told John Henry about a new machine they were going to use to tunnel through the mountain. It was called a steam drill. It can hammer faster and harder than 10 men, and it never has to stop and rest. The next day, the boss arrived with the steam drill. John Henry said to him, "Let's have a contest. Your steam drill against me and my hammers." The man laughed. "I've heard you're the best there ever was, John Henry, but even you can't out-hammer a machine." "Let's find out," John Henry answered. Boss shrugged. "Don't make me no never mind. You start on the other side of the mountain. I'll start the steam drill over here. Whoever gets to the middle first is the winner." The next morning, all was still. The birds weren't singing and the roosters weren't crowing. When the son didn't hear the rooster, he wondered if something was wrong. So he rose a couple minutes early to see. What he saw was a mountain as big as hurt feelings. On one side was a big machine hooked up to hoses. It was belching smoke and steam. As the machine attacked the mountain, rocks and dirt and underbrush flew into the air. On the other side was John Henry. Next to the mountain, he didn't look much bigger than a wish that wasn't going to come true. He had a 20-pound hammer in each hand and muscles hard as wisdom in each arm. As he swung them through the air, they shone like silver, and when the hammers hit the rock, they rang like gold. Before long, tongues of fire leaped out with each blow. Pause on this illustration to jot down what you notice and wonder. Just hit play when you're ready to continue. On the other side, the boss of the steam drill felt the mountain shudder. He got scared and hollered, "I believe this mountain is caving in." From the darkness inside the mountain came a deep voice. "It's just my hammer sucking wind, just my hammer sucking wind." There wasn't enough room inside the tunnel for the rainbow, so it wrapped itself around the mountain on the side where John Henry was. All through the night, John Henry and the steam drill went at it. In the light from the tongues of fire shooting out of the tunnel from John Henry's hammer blows, folks could see the rainbow wrapped around the mountain like a shawl. The sun came up extra early the next morning to see who was winning. Just as it did, John Henry broke through and met the steam drill. The boss of the steam drill was flabbergasted. John Henry had come 1.25 miles. The steam drill had only come a quarter. Folks were cheering and yelling, "John Henry! John Henry!" John Henry walked out of the tunnel into the sunlight, raised his arms over his head, a hammer in each hand. The rainbow slid off the mountain and around his shoulders. With a smile, John Henry's eyes closed and he slowly fell to the ground. John Henry was dead. He had hammered so hard and so fast and so long that his big heart had burst. Everybody was silent for a minute. Then came the sound of soft crying. Some said it came from the moon. Another one said she saw the sun shed a tear. That was a big event. Take a big stretch and jot down what you noticed and wondered about that event. Just hit play when you're ready to continue. Then something strange happened. Afterward, folks swore the rainbow whispered it. I don't know, but whether it was a whisper or a thought, everyone had the same knowing at the same moment. Dying ain't important. Everybody does that. What matters is how well you do your living. First, one person started clapping, then another and another. Soon, everybody was clapping. The next morning, the sun got everybody up early to say goodbye to John Henry. They put him on a flatbed railroad car, and the train made its way slowly out of the mountains. All along the way, folks lined both sides of the track, and they were cheering and shouting through their tears, "John Henry! John Henry!" John Henry's body was taken to Washington, D.C. Some say he was buried on the White House lawn late one night while the president and the Mrs. President was asleep. I don't know about none of that. What I do know is this. If you walk by the White House late at night, stand real still and listen real closely. Folks say you might just hear a deep voice singing, "I got a rainbow ring, ring, tied round my shoulder, ring, ring. It ain't gonna rain, no, it ain't gonna rain, ring, ring." Pause to take a big stretch for our last big event in this legend. Your teacher will take this opportunity to check in with you about your notices and also your wonder questions. Remember, it's okay to scroll back on the timeline to listen or to view something again. If you need to pause here to add more to your journal, please do that now, and then just hit play to continue our video lesson.
Okay, so you were supposed to be writing down your notices and your wonders. while you were listening to the story. So if you need to pause and do some more of those, that would be good. Remember, you need to have at least 2 notices and at least 2 wonders. And I am going to share mine with you. Just a second, I got to figure out how to do this. I'm going to try to use a new document camera, but I'm not really sure if it's going to work. So let's see what happens. Okay, here we go. Zoom back out. Okay, so here are, oh, wait, hold on. Yeah, it's not working. Hold on, 1 second. I'm gonna share my screen again. Really? Computer, really? Okay, here we go. Share screen. Okay, now let's try this. I hope this works. So I have today's date, the title of the story, my notice, and my wonder. So my notices for the story were there were animals at his birth in this book too. If you remember in our last book, there were animals that came out of the woods when he was born, and they did that in this book. And I thought the illustrations were funny in this one. Like some of them were really funny. And I also noticed that the sun is like a character. You know how it talks about he got up and he brushed his teeth and he stretched and he woke everybody up. So they kind of made the sun into a type of character in the story. One other thing I noticed is that Henry didn't get his hammers until he left home this time. His daddy gave them to him so that he would have something to make his way in the world. And remember in our other book, he was born with one in his hand. Remember that? And then I also noticed that the author used onomatopoeias or sound words in this story also. And so my wonders were, did they have indoor swimming pools back then? On page 8, it talked about an indoor swimming pool. I don't think they had those. Is it possible for a man to outrun a horse? What do you think? And what did it mean when the book talked about the boulder rang like freedom when it came to the slaves? What did that mean? And my last wonder that I could fit on the page, I had plenty more, was did the artist make John Henry's red neck wrap stand out on purpose? Was he trying to make that like a little pop of color? I don't know. Interesting, isn't it? Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. There I am again. Okay. I really hope that worked. I'm gonna share my screen again, go back to the video. We are almost done. Remember, you are going to take a picture of your page 88 in your journal today, and you're gonna post that for me so that I can see what your notices and wonders were. That's gonna be your assignment for today. All right, so we are almost done. We got a few more minutes of our video. So let's go ahead and finish this up.
Because you're so observant, you probably noticed that some of the language in this version of John Henry was very different. It's called fantastical language. Fantastical language is fun to read and fun to picture in our mind, but it's not something that can actually happen, but it sure is fun to read. Let's take a look at 2 examples. The first example is the air danced. Julius Lester just could have said the people were happy or there was a happy mood, but instead he used fantastical language. Close your eyes and picture the air dancing. Isn't it cool? It's not something that could really happen, but it could in a fantasy world. That's what fantastical language is. Open your eyes so we can take a look at one more example. The rainbow draped around him like love. Can a rainbow really drape around us? Which means, can it be close to us and hang on us like clothes? Pause here to tell me or to tell a learning partner and just hit play to continue. Julius Lester, the author, could have just said, people loved John Henry, and that would have made sense in the story. But instead, he used fantastical language. He put an image in our mind. Let's close our eyes and picture it. Picture someone is loved so much that they have a rainbow draped around them. Isn't that amazing? It is fantastical. I encourage you to add these two examples of fantastical language to what you noticed and even mark them somehow with a star or put a big heavy circle around them. As growing writers, you can include fantastical language in your own narrative writing. And these are two wonderful examples that we don't want to forget. Pause here to do that work and then just hit play when you're ready to wrap up our video lesson. I'm guessing that you already noticed some differences between this version of John Henry's legend and Keats' version of John Henry's legend. Share what you noticed with others, and I will see you again very soon.
Okay, so that is actually the end of today's lesson. So all that you need to do for work for today is to make sure that you have page 88 completed with at least 2 notices and at least 2 wonders. And you're going to take a picture of it and upload it into the Google slide for today. Okay. Please make sure that you are taking a picture of your own work, not mine. Do not take a screenshot of the video and expect me to accept it because I will not. Okay? Make sure you're doing your own work and make sure you are posting it and don't just turn it in blank. You don't get credit for that. I have to see that you're actually doing the work. Okay? And that's all that we've got for today. So I hope you guys have a great afternoon and I will see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.